This is track 2, as you can tell. We're going to have Allison Jones Brimmer come up in a minute. My name is Paul Dyke. I work for Quality Liquid Feeds. For most of you, you know that QLF is based here in Wisconsin. We're the only national liquid feed company based here in Wisconsin. I'm the regional sales manager, but I also do a lot of tech work on farms. I want to introduce you to my compatriot. Where's John? John Bedversi is in the back there. This may be the only day I see him in a tie. Most days, well, I know, you look good, John. Most days, John and I are out in farms solving problems for folks. If you've got a question for us, please let us know. Things that John and I do last few years, I know a number of you have seen my interns on farms looking at quality control on TMRs. You've seen, I've had about 14 interns on a lot of farms, on a lot of your farms in here. Thank you. John spends a lot of time looking at rations. We try to solve problems with nutritionists. We try to be side by side with nutritionists to look at rations, to look at problems on farms, to try to help you solve problems. And at this time, maybe it's looking at ration costs or components to help you. So that's enough about us. I want to introduce you to our speaker today, Allison Jones Brimmer. Is Director of Membership for Animal Ag Alliance, national nonprofit organization, connects individuals, associations, and companies who are interested in helping consumers better understand the role animal ag plays in providing a safe, abundant food supply to a hungry world. In this role, she fosters relationships with current and prospective members and donors. She's responsible for raising awareness and recognition of the Alliance brand with external stakeholders as well as the growing Alliance membership and sponsorship. Prior to joining the Alliance, she worked in sales, customer service with Farm Credit East. She grew up in northern New York, where she gained experience in the dairy industry, working on farms and a cheese processing plant. Talking to her a little bit more, I realized she's also a Cornell grad, which means she's a Cornellian. So if you meet her, make sure you mention, good to meet a Cornellian. So Allison, you're up.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you for inviting me to Wisconsin in January. It's a really great time to come here. I am from New York, so I do understand the snow and the cold, but currently living in Arlington, Virginia, I've gotten a little bit weak when it comes to dealing with cold weather, so this is a little bit of a shock for me. You heard a little bit about my background from Paul's introduction, but I wanted to give you a little bit more detail. I grew up in northern New York in a very rural area, primarily a dairy area, so I drove by multiple farms on a daily basis, but my family wasn't directly involved in agriculture. I showed horses, so I got involved in 4-H to be able to show at the county fair, then joined FFA, and was able to meet a lot of really great farmers, those working in agriculture. I was so impressed by what those farmers were doing, the innovations on their farms, that I wanted to learn more, and eventually found a passion in helping others who, like me, didn't come from a farming background, have that same understanding, be able to connect with farmers in the same way. So working at the Alliance is a really great fit for me. Moving to the Washington, D.C. area was a little bit of a transition. You know, back home where I grew up, when people honk at you, it's usually to say hello. There's a friendly wave. In DC, not quite the same. People honk at you. There's a very different wave involved, and usually some anger behind that. But DC is a great place to be. There's always a lot going on. While our organization doesn't lobby, it is a very important part of the impact that can be had on animal agriculture across the country. So really thankful to be working for the Animal Ag Alliance and doing the work that we do. And interested in getting to know you a little bit as well. Who in the room is a dairy farmer, dairy producer? Okay, of the dairy producers, who hires employees outside of their family? Okay, allowed you all to be here today. I'm sure that was a big help. Who in the room is from agribusiness? So they rely on the dairy industry. They might sell or service products there. Okay, so we've got a pretty good split. So thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about engaging neighbors and protecting from activists. The Animal Agriculture Alliance has been around for over 30 years. Our mission is to bridge the communication gap between farm and fork, and we do so in these three areas of connect, engage, and protect. So I'll go through some examples of the work we do in the three areas, as well as sharing some information about why we were formed and what negativity is out there as well. I'd like to throw up our board of directors just to show you the kind of the scope of the work that we do and who we represent. So we have all the different national species organizations. Dairy is represented by Dairy Management, Inc., as well as a lot of businesses, farms, and companies that work within animal agriculture. And we exist. We were formed 30 years ago because some of the key national associations saw animal rights activists putting the livelihood of your business, your family under attack in an effort to end animal agriculture. So when animal rights activists started to turn toward animal agriculture, wanting to put an end to the industry, those people in agriculture, some of the national groups that formed our organization, really saw a need for our organization and the role that we fill. We know that consumers are hungry to know more about where their food comes from. They want more information, but unfortunately, they're frequently getting answers from those who want to spread negative messages more so than farmers themselves. So if you guys have a question about something, you don't know about a certain topic, you want to find out more about something, where do you turn? What do you do? Google. So if someone who doesn't know anything about agriculture goes to Google, what do they see? So this is how dairy cows are treated. The first page of results, and we know not too many people ever go to the second or third page of results, is all information from activist organizations like the Humane Society of the United States, PETA, Farm Sanctuary, all groups that want to put an end to animal agriculture. Same thing with trying to become more sustainable and use technology. When you search what is a GMO, you get all the responses from the Non-GMO Project. You get some scary images of syringes in a tomato or an apple or whatever it might be at any given moment. So definitely someone who's outside the industry doesn't know anything. If the first place they go is to Google, they're not going to get a good picture. And the animal rights activists, as well as some other activists, extreme activist groups such as environmental activists, are trying to wedge themselves in between what we're doing on our side, those who are directly involved in agriculture, and wedging themselves in between us and the reasonable majority of people who don't know much about agriculture, maybe haven't given it a thought yet, or some people who have questions, and they're trying to pull them over to their side. So we really need to have some communications out there that are also targeting consumers, customers, policymakers, and investors to have that same conversation but share a different side of the story, get them involved in seeing what actually goes on a farm on a daily basis. The animal rights movement has become a very large and has a lot of different organizations involved. So you probably can't see specifically each of the logos up there, but this graphic is available on our website and kind of shows the movement of people and funding and resources and collaboration between these different groups. We know some of the organizations like to put a lot of cats and dogs with sad faces on TV and use that for fundraising, but we've been tracking them and what their true mission is and what they're truly using that funding for, and we use this as one of the tools to show that these organizations all have that vegan and animal agriculture mission in common because we know they're sharing resources. There's people that are moving back and forth, employees that are working at multiple of these organizations. And we have some quotes from some of these groups. We are preying on emotions to push our vegan agenda. Sometimes we have to be aggressive and it doesn't matter what form. Our goal is the abolition of all animal agriculture. We are trying to destroy animal agriculture. And then the last quote is about driving down demand and increasing costs so that people will stop buying meat. Typically, they're talking about meat, milk, and eggs and all animal products as well. We actually send on an annual basis some representatives to some of the activist conferences to get the kind of behind the scenes look. what they're sharing, what information they're sharing with their followers and what their tactics are going to be. So from the 2017 conference, we saw, which happens over the summer, we saw a push to stop talking about factory farming because they have often used factory farming as a scary word or phrase that they're going to use to make farms look bad and specifically targeting large farms. But now they want to stop using that term and make sure that they're portraying the message that all of animal agriculture is bad. It doesn't matter the size of the farm. It's bad to use animals to produce food. Animal welfare is not the end game, animal rights is. So we know the difference. We know that we are always trying to improve animal welfare. There's research being done constantly, and we know farmers and ranchers do their best to make those improvements as the science backs it up, but that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to play on emotions, and animal rights is the end game. And giving animals the same rights as humans versus just animal welfare and making sure that animal is treated as humanely as possible. There was a lot of talk of pressuring restaurants and retailers, which has been going on for a few years now. They are willing to break the law. They think it's worth it in the name of animal rights, so definitely not afraid of being a little bit extreme and going further than the law allows to do something and to make their point, and protesting and disruptions were encouraged. We know these groups have a wide variety of tactics. You saw a lot of different groups up there on the web, so each one of those groups might have something different that they're focusing on. Some of them use a little bit of everything, so it's all working together toward reaching their end goal. I'll point out a couple here and then go more in depth on a few of them as well. So they love having celebrity activists. The small picture you can see to the far side of the screen is a picture of Ryan Gosling, who is very clearly an expert in animal welfare, who contacted the National Milk Producers Federation about it was either tail docking or dehorning. It's a little bit of an older letter, but obviously he is the leading expert in dairy welfare. So using activists, using celebrities in that way, utilizing legislation and regulation at the state and federal level whenever they can, using any food safety or crisis concerns that happen on farms or throughout the entire food chain to their advantage to try to tell a negative story, focusing on youth, both elementary and high schools and colleges. So they have a lot of social media and resources that they give to teachers for free as a way to spread their messaging. And then colleges are a really big target because it's the first time a student is making their own food purchasing decisions. They're on their own for the first time and looking for a place to fit in. So and fitting in with an animal rights activist crowd might be appealing to some students. And they can be very impressionable, so that's a big focus of some of the activist organizations. Having ballot initiatives, lawsuits, and complaints, all part of the plan and part of the tactics. One of the historically most common one is the use of undercover videos. So oftentimes the activists will try to get employed on farms under false pretenses, and they're at the same time working for an activist organization. They're utilizing video. In some cases, they're egging people on, egging their coworkers on, or causing some of the problems at the farms. In some cases, they're just highly editing videos and taking things out of context and giving a bad explanation. And to someone who's never seen a farm before, they don't know the difference. What they're hearing and seeing is their truth. So we need to be there first in showing pictures and videos of what happens on a farm every day so that people have that frame of reference. Trespassing has been a little bit more recent and is starting to increase in popularity. So this article was from a California dairy where a group was trespassing. It's called Direct Action Everywhere. So they are one of the primary groups that is involved with this trespassing, and they're calling it open rescue, which basically means they go and steal an animal from an active farm. And this is it happening on a dairy in California. They stole a calf. Then a few months later, they held a vigil and a protest on the farm. They wanted to reunite the calf with her mother and were asking the farm to release that cow. Very concerning, because if you are in a rural area and you've never had the need to secure your facility before, they can walk right on the farm and get what they want and do what they want. Sometimes we've seen them in a poultry facility, breaking in at night, a huge biosecurity risk, especially in poultry, but then they were setting up video scenes to show whatever they wanted to at that point, because there was no employees there to stop them, to do anything. So they were kind of able to capture whatever video coverage they wanted to at that point. So this organization has been most active so far in California and in the Denver, Colorado area, but we definitely need to be prepared for it here as well, especially since dairy is on their radar. Coming to an area that has a lot of dairy farms might be appealing to them. And then another, also kind of newer group, or a group that has been increasing in their activity against animal agriculture and dairy specifically, is the Animal Recovery Mission. They call themselves ARM. They are headquartered in Florida, so all of their activity so far has been in Florida. They released 4 dairy videos quite rapidly over the last couple of months. And some of the things were not good, were things that needed to be corrected on that farm. The owners realized their employees weren't following proper procedures and proper training plans. But other things were normal industry practices that were being explained in a completely negative way. Even if it's something that helps the animal, helps the welfare of the animal, they're explaining it in a different way to an audience that's never seen it before. So again, they're believing it's a negative thing. And what's interesting about this group is they have a facility in Florida where they set up a mock farm and train people to do the job, so they're more believable when they go to get hired on a farm. They've been trained to do the job, so you have a harder time identifying them as a potential activist. So definitely scary group. Like I said, right now all the activities in Florida where they're headquartered, but again, they want to make a name for themselves. They want to make a big splash. They're definitely going to keep on going. And most recently, they have released a video on a poultry, a laying hen house. So we know that they're going to continue to broaden their horizons. So coming to some place like Wisconsin or the upper Midwest is not out of the question. So we've tracked these videos for the 30 years that we've been an organization, and every year we take a look at what is their purpose behind each of the videos, what industry are they targeting. So this is kind of some trends that we've seen in what their purpose is. More recently, the identifying an industry practice and going vegan, just a general eat a plant-based diet is the main message that they're trying to spread. They also are attacking humane certification programs, so we really encourage third-party audits and making sure everything is squared away on your farm as best as possible, and they're going after the credibility of those third-party certification groups. They also pressure retailers and restaurants and use videos for legislative purposes. This is through 2016, so we need to do our analysis for last year as well, but all of those, it was kind of an all of the above year on what the different messages were, the different purposes for the videos. So next I'll talk a little bit about the group's pressure on restaurant and retailers to make a policy change that will make its way backward to you on the farm. This first one here is cage-free eggs, so probably not directly impacting you, but it's a good example of what happened. Back in 2004, Whole Foods was one of the first, this one is specific to retailers, so grocery store chains. Whole Foods was the first chain to make an announcement regarding cage-free, make a policy. And that's pretty common that Whole Foods and some organizations like that. Oftentimes we'll see Panera as one of the first restaurant chains to make policy stances on something, and the food service companies as well. There's a couple. Bon Appetit is a food service organization that's often at the beginning of the trend on these types of things. So back in 2004 was when it started. It really started to gain speed in late 2015, and then you see in 2016 a few more groups made announcements, and then kind of the dominoes fell, and once all of their competitors were doing it, they felt like they had to do it as well, and by the end of 2016 you have pretty much every major retail chain making some sort of announcement about how they're going to source their eggs. The current one is regarding slower growing chickens. So to give you a little background on what the idea here is, it's more of an entire broiler welfare policy, but it's for the meat chickens, and they want it to take 2 more weeks to grow the chicken to maturity, to the size where it can be sold. And from a chicken producer's standpoint, 2 more weeks worth of growing the chicken is 2 more weeks worth of manure, 2 more weeks worth of feed, water, environmental impact, so really negative on the sustainability. Up until this point, there has not been much research on if it actually helps the welfare of the birds or not. So again, they're not concerned about the welfare of the birds. They know it's more expensive to make the chickens grow 2 weeks longer. And it seems like it's a catchy phrase, right? Slow food seems like it's catching on for some people. So the slower growing chickens is something that can catch on marketing-wise. But we really have a great story to tell here about the sustainability improvements that have been made over the years, and really talking about that sustainability message is important. So again, we've seen Whole Foods and Bon Appetit make some policies, a few more throughout 2016, several in 2017, but unlike the cage-free eggs, the broiler industry was able to get ahead of it a little bit more, share that sustainability story and those concerns, and we've seen some pumping of the brakes on the announcements and the policies that have come out. So this one's going a little bit better than the cage-free egg side did. This is antibiotic use, so something that could definitely affect dairy. It's oftentimes more targeted toward the poultry industry. Poultry can do more to raise animals without antibiotics because their life, especially on the meat chicken side, the lifespan is fairly short, so it's a little bit easier to make those transitions, whereas in beef cattle or dairy cows, while we administer antibiotics only when necessary, it might be a little bit more difficult. But some chains have started already making policies that will affect the dairy industry. So it's again the activists trying to pressure the retailers and restaurants into making a change that takes away a tool from you to keep your animals healthy, provide the best welfare possible, make it more expensive for you to produce, more difficult to produce, and in the end, their mission of they're using a stepping stone approach to get to the end goal of taking meat, milk, and eggs off of everyone's plates. This is a kind of scary one. So we noticed about 10 years ago that the activist organizations were developing relationships with religious leaders, and they've really utilized the religious community to spread their messaging. So they're trying to, they kind of cherry pick from the Bible to spread their messages that eating animals goes against God's will. It should not be done. So we've HSUS's campaign was the Every Living Thing campaign. We saw a flyer that got handed out in some churches across the country at Lent with some factory farming language, a lot of HSUS terminology and messaging within it, encouraging people to reduce their meat consumption. So definitely concerning, and it's an issue we're engaging on at the Animal Ag Alliance. We've done some research into this, done some focus groups about messaging because really there is, the Bible does give permission to eat animals and use them, treat them humanely. Obviously, we want to have a lot of care and compassion for them, but from a religious standpoint, there is some backing to utilizing animals for human purposes. So we have, through the research, through the focus groups, developed talking points and editorials that can be used at more of a local grassroots level as these issues come up. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and focus on a little bit of the more positive side. What can you do as a dairy farmer or someone working within the industry to help the cause, share a positive story? We know that communications and transparency absolutely must be there in order to maintain confidence from your customers, so those who you're selling your product to, and the consumers, the end user of where that product is going. It's no longer enough just to get the milk on the truck and ship it to a plant and you think your job is done, you're good to go. You've really got to be willing to open your barn doors through social media or literally welcoming people to the farm in order to prove that you're doing the best job possible to care for your animals, your land, and your employees. So it all starts on the farm. The first step is really making sure you're implementing science-based animal care and environmental policies. Because if that aspect's not there, you can't really go any further. You need to get that squared away before you're going to open your barn doors and communicate. So if you've got room for improvement, seek outside assistance, utilize the resources and tools, get things written down, and make sure that you're always striving for continuous improvement. Since a lot of you in the room do hire employees, it's so vitally important to have a rigorous process in place for that hiring and to follow it every single time. I know it's really difficult when you're in a pinch and you need someone to milk the cows, you need someone to feed the cows, and you don't have anyone. It's a real challenge, and we definitely see that, but that's the time when you're the most vulnerable, and an activist organization is going to stick someone in there, and if you miss a couple steps in your process, you've hired them and you've opened yourself up to a whole lot more risk and concern in the future. So doing background checks, actually checking references, you've really got to take the time to do that when you've got a new employee starting. Once they're on the farm, it's crucial to have a thorough training process and refresher courses. We encourage you to have your employees sign off that they've received the animal care training and whatever training and refresher courses you have that needs to be documented, and they need to sign off on that. You can conduct self-audits, so showing up unannounced. It's kind of a delicate balance between your employees feeling like you're spying on them and you trust them, but making sure you're stopping in, you're there, you're present. Some farms have started putting more cameras in their facilities to take a look at what's going on, being able to check in on a 24-hour basis. If you've got a family member or friend who's not as familiar with ag, invite them over and do a walkthrough of your facility. Have them tell you what looks wrong to them, what they don't understand, and either be able to have an explanation for that or do something to fix it and make it look better, make the process, make sure the animal is always looking like they're comfortable and well cared for. So really taking the time to do some of those improvements, and then once you're at that point, third-party audits are a really great idea. With most of the milk supply being a part of the farm program now, there's a lot more of that going on, but it's great for you to take the initiative to get some third-party audits on your own as well. There's a lot of different organizations out there that can help you with that and really provide some verification that you're doing the right thing and your employees are doing what you've trained them to do. We also really encourage our members to instill a professional culture. So it's often being an animal caretaker, a milker or feeder is often not looked at as a prestigious and professional job, but it really requires a lot of skill, a lot of caring and compassion for that animal. So this is an example. One of our members, Cooper Farms, has the CARES program, and they highly reward employees for any advancements that they make in animal care or environmental care, and really encourage their employees to offer feedback, share ideas, and then they reward them for that. So creating that professional culture can go a long way for the morale and the employees wanting to do the right things. Once you've got everything squared away on the farm, everything's running smoothly, your training and hiring process are all where they should be, then start opening the barn doors, start that active communication. So build relationships with local law enforcement and legislators before you need them. Law enforcement or emergency personnel in your community are great, if a crisis occurs, but they can also have your back if something comes up in terms of animal welfare. Become media trained. Has anyone in the room ever gone through a media training program? Was it the most fun day of your life? So it's not always the most fun. It's a little nerve-wracking, but really being prepared to have that camera stuck in your face is a good thing. It's there. That training is there when you need it. And also, it helps you with just having day-to-day conversations. If someone asks you a question at the grocery store, or at your son's basketball game, you're more prepared to answer that question because you've had that media training, you've had the experience and the stress of having the camera stuck in your face when you're doing it, and it's a much more natural conversation to have when it's just with a neighbor or a friend. Engage with and support local community and business organizations. Typically, farmers in their community are the first to do this. They're on the school board, they're with serving the Chamber of Commerce, they're in community service organizations, so probably don't have to tell you that, but it just, again, provides those opportunities to have more conversations. Having an online presence is a great way to show what's going on your farm without physically inviting people to the farm. So using social media or having a website are great ways to show what's going on, or even just using your own personal social media page to share some pictures from the farm every once in a while, or share some stories that really help people see what you do on a day-to-day basis. And hosting farm tours and open house, great thing to do if you're able to open the barn doors literally. Definitely encourage you to do that. Open house is a little bit nicer because it's one day. You can pull in a lot of volunteers. A lot of the agribusiness people in the room are probably willing to help out with that. So a really great way to just open the barn doors, let people see what's happening. And then distributing a farm newsletter has been a really effective tool as well that I've seen some dairy farmers use. A lot of farms are doing this on a quarterly basis, so when each season changes, they can explain what's going to go on in the new season, what sights they'll see on the farm, what smells they might be experiencing in that season coming forward, and just helps, it might start a conversation with some of your neighbors and give them just some information about what's actually going on so they don't have to wonder and question every time they see a big tractor or a truck that they're not really familiar with. And even though you might be in a very rural area, we just are having more and more people as our neighbors who aren't familiar with what's going on, even in the rural small towns and communities. So just want to share a few examples of farms that are sharing their story. This is Lauren. She's a Virginia poultry and beef producer who has a whole blog and social media presence that shares what goes on her farm. Some of you might know Annalise, who's the modern day farm chick in Wisconsin, does a great job of incorporating humor and just real life, what's going on today, information, again, blog and social media. Andrew Campbell is a dairy farmer in Canada who a couple of years ago used the hashtag Farm365 and made it his New Year's resolution to post a picture from the farm every single day for the entire year. That hashtag really caught on and a lot of people use it in social media. Last year, his New Year's resolution was to go to 52 different types of farms in 52 weeks and do a video series about each one of them. So everything from a cucumber farm to dairies to beef, kind of you name it, he went to a farm and did a video series on it. So it's a really great way to open people's eyes to the different types of agriculture that are out there. A few farms that are doing some on-farm stuff, an adventure camp, hosting that family farm day, and inviting bloggers or dietitians in for tours. So this was a group of turkey producers who invited a group of dietitians in and did a series of tours at farms and at processing plants. So dietitians are often answering questions about food without knowing how that food is produced. So they're asked questions about agriculture and on-farm stuff and sometimes don't know the answers. So that's a really great group to engage with. You might be familiar with Fair Oaks Farms, kind of the Disneyland of dairy farming. So I know that was a huge investment and it's a really big deal. It doesn't need to be that extreme to be fun for kids and families to go to, but that's a really great example of getting people on farm. They're seeing large scale production and modern production. This is a few years ago now, but the Menchie's frozen yogurt CEO went on Undercover Boss and went to the dairy farm that produces a lot of their milk as one of his stops. So really got to a lot of hearts and minds of the viewers about what was happening on that dairy farm. I'm going to transition for a little bit to cover what we're doing at the Animal Ag Alliance and then open it up for a few questions. So I talked about the connect, engage, and protect areas of our mission. We have a lot of committees that we connect our members in. We have a supply channel subcommittee that's really focused on that restaurant and retailer engagement. And we have a database of all the different policies that have been made by restaurants and retailers that will affect farmers. Includes their timelines, as well as if there was any activist group pressure or collaboration on making that announcement, and oftentimes there is. So unfortunately, they're going to activist groups to help make their policies instead of farmers and ranchers or those that are actually along their supply chain. We produce a report from I told you we have representatives attend activist group conferences. Anything that they talk about food, retailers, restaurants, food service chains, we put that into a special report called Under Pressure because they really talk about the pressure they put on those companies and the damage that they can do to their brand by utilizing their campaigns. So we put that in a special report and provide that to the restaurants and retailers so they can see another side of, while some of the groups show up in a business suit and sit down and have a very professional, collaborative conversation, this is what they're also saying regarding how they want to affect your business. I mentioned the animals and religion work that we're doing. We have a members-only LinkedIn group as well where we can have some discussion. We also host an annual conference called the Stakeholder Summit. It will be coming up in May in Arlington, Virginia. We alternate between Arlington and Kansas City every year. So this year, the theme is Share Your Roots. It'll take place the first week in May, and you all are invited to come. I encourage you to check out animalagalliance.org/summit to see more information on that. And we will be showcasing a panel about the lessons learned from those dairy-focused activist campaigns that I shared earlier with the group that stole a calf at a farm in California and the group that has their own training facility in Florida that's been doing undercover videos. On the Engage side, we have our College Aggies online program. Just like activists are engaging college students, we need to have ag students on their campuses be willing to speak out and share their truth about their industry. So we've had about 6,000 participants since the program began in 2009, and last fall's participants reached 4 million people on social media and about 16,000 people at in-person events on their campuses. So here are a couple examples of the dairy-related posts during the Dairy Week and some of the in-person events that the clubs take part in. So the top one is just holding an ag day on campus. A lot of times they'll bring in a cow or farm animals to let the attendees interact with. The second one down is a group that went into some local schools to do some ag-related educational lessons. And then a group did some legislative visits at their state capitol. We also do a lot of engagement with the media, both social and traditional media. So we have a presence on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and Pinterest and LinkedIn. We're posting on all of these channels, most of them daily. We have an editorial calendar for the year, and we're focused on different themes, so dairy is in that rotation. Since we do cover all the different sectors of animal agriculture, we have a rotation, and then sometimes we focus on more specific issues that affect all of the industries, like antibiotics or sustainability. We have these graphics shared on our website in addition to being on our social media channels, so if you're ever looking for some dairy social media on a specific topic, feel free to head over to our website and take any of our graphics that you see there. So we talk a lot about cow comfort, calves, and nutrition. And then on the traditional media side, we work with both trade media, so those within agriculture we're kind of sharing some tips and information about how to protect yourself, and then also mainstream media, where we're more focused on getting our messages out to consumers and that audience, and most importantly, making sure a balanced story is shared when someone is writing a story on agriculture. So we really aim to be the go-to organization for those umbrella issues. If it is a dairy-specific issue, we'll work with the dairy organizations to make sure the messages are being shared, but those kind of overarching issues, we really are trying to build relationships with food reporters at the mainstream media sources so that they come to us. If we're not the expert, we can get them in touch with the right people, and we can have agriculture story shared in a more balanced piece. We have a Meat Matters campaign, which talks about the health benefits and sustainability aspects of animal agriculture and eating meat, milk, and eggs as part of a balanced diet. This is in response to a lot of the activists' push for Meatless Mondays. They've referred to that as a tiny little trick to take meat off the plate one day a week, and really their goal is to get it off the plate every day of the week. So it's a stepping stone for them. So we have some counter pieces, some white papers, some graphics you can share on social media. You can take the Meat Matters or Proud Omnivore Pledge if you're on social media as well. So that's all right on our website. We share a lot of infographics, especially about hot button issues. It's a great way to graphically show information that can be complex, so adding it in with these pictures and just little graphic elements to it really helps people who don't have a lot of background gain a little bit better of an understanding of some of these complex issues. And then on the Protect side, we have a farm security mobile app, so if you are a farm that does a lot of hiring, definitely encourage you to look into this. It's only available to our members, but it's a great tool. We have some information about people we know who've worked on farms before. We're able to send out text and email alerts to all the users of the app if we see some sort of suspicious activity going on around the country. It's a really great way to utilize our network and make sure everyone is as prepared as possible for what tactics might be coming their way. So here's kind of an example of some of the alerts. The text alerts are very short, just tell you kind of a brief snap of what and where, and then direct you to the app to get more details. Once you're in the app, we have any pictures we can share, any descriptions, and more details about what the incident was. We monitor media, legislation, and undercover videos. Again, most of this is available publicly on our website if you're interested in any of that. And then we have a lot of member-only resources, so we're keeping that gated for just those who are within animal agriculture, within the industry. So the full reports of the activist conferences that we send representatives to are available. Activist group profiles, so we have a one-page profile on over 80 different organizations that have a similar goal of ending animal agriculture, but they're using either animal rights messaging, environmental extremist messaging, or some sort of consumer-focused messaging. So we can use these to help give a quick snapshot of what that organization's true mission is, what tactics they use, and some quotes from their leaders. And then we send action alerts and member alerts out whenever we hear of something of importance. We can do it regionally or by sector of the industry, and just kind of, again, share that information with our network so the industry can be as prepared as possible for what may be coming their way. So like I said, we're on all of the social media channels. If you're active on any of those, really encourage you to follow us and hope you'll share our posts or utilize our graphics. If you're interested in getting our newsletter, there's a sign up for our newsletter at the top of our website, animalagalliance.org. And I will be here for a majority of the day today, so feel free to seek me out and have a conversation. Definitely appreciate your time today and happy to answer a few questions.
You mentioned earlier about the cage-free eggs. How is that working? What I've heard, the producers changed and now they don't even want them, or they're having a hard time marketing them as cage-free?
Yeah, so that's been a struggle. It looks like on the restaurant side, where a consumer can't really see the price difference, cage-free versus non, they like to see it on the cage-free as on the menu. But when they're at the grocery store shopping, they're looking at the price of cage-free eggs and the price of conventional eggs and choosing conventional. So it's a real concern. The producers are not able to get that premium in some cases, and there's a lot of uncertainty about whether the grocery store chains are going to follow through on their commitments in the timeline they've said. So it's really put a lot of pressure and put a lot of uncertainty on the egg industry to know what to do next. So the larger egg producers were able to withstand it a little bit better because they were able to move, to make those changes, but some of them have put the brakes on new facilities or following through on conversions. So it'll be interesting to see, but this is why we need to have those conversations with restaurants and retailers before they make the policy to talk about what the implications are. The Alliance is actually funding some research right now to figure out what price point people are willing to pay for certain claims and use cage-free eggs and broiler chickens as a case study to help inform other decisions like this in other sectors.
Has there been any have the trends here domestically translated into international export demands from the cage-free to the slow grower chickens and things like that?
I'm definitely not an expert on how it affects trade, but I can tell you that a lot of other regions of the world, Europe especially, already have these policies in place, so there is some hindrance on us trading to those countries that have those policies in place. So in some cases it can help. In other cases, it hurts us be just competitive price-wise. So I'm definitely not the expert on that, but it does play a factor in trade and our ability to work with some other countries.
Thank you for sharing your story. I subscribe to a lot of dairy publications, but I also subscribe to Prepared Food. And that is a publication that goes out to restaurants and retailers. It's very depressing because the entire publication talks about plant-based, non-dairy, non-GMO. I mean, I went through and I started taking a tally. Every ad, and these are launching the new products and the new trends for 2018. So where is this starting? Because this is what's going to the people who are buying the products. Is it the packaging industry? Is it because it's a mature food industry, so they're looking for new niche markets? Because if you have a focus group who's supposed to be educating those, it sure would be nice to put some positive agriculture and safety messages in the Prepared Foods magazine, which is telling people what the trends are and telling restaurants and retailers what to buy for their customer.
Yeah, so we definitely need to do a better job engaging in those areas. It's something our organization is trying to do with, in conjunction with the different species groups. But I think it's there's a lot of different factors involved. Consumers are seeing those buzzwords even if they don't know what non-GMO really means, it feels better to them. They don't want to take the time to research it. So companies are selling it with that label because they can meet a marketing need. But I think a lot of it does originate with these activist organizations who are partnering with, there's a lot of different food companies out there that are making cultured meat, so meat in a lab without an animal, or vegan mayo, or things like that. So those companies are partnering with the HSUS and the other organizations to promote their product, and HSUS wants to eliminate the use of animals, so it's a good partnership. Some of the leaders of some of the activist organizations are actually the ones who started these companies, so there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on to work together and put that pressure out there for encouraging plant-based, encouraging cultured meat. And I think from Animal Ag Alliance's standpoint, we're really in favor of consumer choice, and we're happy to have friendly competition, a lot of options out there for consumers to buy what labels they want to buy, but doing so by disparaging traditional animal agriculture is not the way to get that done.
Could just make one comment. In following these trends, you see that these activist organizations are essentially teaching people how to be bullies, right, as far as the brands go. And yet, all across our schools, we try to teach children how not to be bullies. It just seems kind of funny or interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of work to be done. Like I said, they're not afraid to break the law. They're not afraid to be bullies. So we've got a lot of work to do to communicate our positive story. We need to do so proactively, in addition to continuing to monitor what they're doing and responding to them as well. So definitely a lot of work in this area, but the farmer is the best person to tell the story. So really hope some of you leave this conference with a little bit, few more tools and a little bit more inspiration and confidence to share your story with your neighbors, your social media followers, anyone who might want to listen. So thank you.
Folks, we are running a bit behind in time, about 20 minutes behind, so I think for the sake of the time we have, we're going to get started here. My name is Troy Doring. I'm a sales rep here in the state of Wisconsin. And on behalf of Elanco, I'd like to introduce our breakout session speaker, Leah Beyer. In addition to her role as a farm wife and mom, Leah is Director of Global Digital Communications for Elanco Animal Health, where she guides the digital and social media team that implements the social media strategies, website oversight, and social media listening for the business and education needs of the company. She has also worked with the 4-H program, Indiana Farm Bureau, and had her own consulting business that helped agricultural organizations through the governmental and social media mazes. Leah lives with her family on their farm in Indiana and connects with consumers on her blogs, Buyer Beware and Farm Wife Drinks. Please help me in welcoming Leah Beyer.
Thank you, Troy. Can everyone hear me? Do I need to move? Perfect. Well, I'm going to give you a little glimpse into the trends of social media. So you just heard about how to connect, what you can do about activists. I'm going to sort of broaden what this looks like. To be completely transparent, I went to college to be a grain trader. That's really what I thought I was going to do. I had a career change that brought me into a relationship with a dairy farmer, and I quickly became a dairy farmer's wife. And I looked at my little children one day and realized that if I didn't do anything, these activists were going to win the war. So I'm an accidental social media lover, mainly because I decided I had to do something if my kids were going to have a choice whether to farm or not. So I became, probably my husband would say I became obsessed with social media, hence the reason I have 2 Twitter handles. I love it so much, I have 2 Twitter handles. But in all actuality, I did a lot of lobbying on policy work for farmers in Indiana and decided that the folks that are following me for my recipes and my cocktails probably don't care what's going on in the Ag Committee at the Indiana State House. So if you care about politics, follow me on Farm Mom Pundit. if you care about recipes and cocktails, follow me on Buyer Beware. So the Elanco Pulse Institute, a lot of people have heard about this room we have at Elanco, and some people haven't, that's fine. But we decided about 4 years ago that we could not be caught on our heels around those issues like pink slime. People hate when I say pink slime, but that's how it's referred to in social media. So we are literally listening every day to what are those food trends? What are those activists doing? What are those normal people doing? We learn from those conversations, and then we figure out how can we, not just at Elanco, but we as farmers, we as industry professionals, we as influencers can shape that conversation. It's always eye-opening for us. I actually took this picture last week. President Trump spoke at the American Farm Bureau. We're constantly monitoring social media, but we also are constantly monitoring mainstream media. What are they talking about? What do they care about? Because TV helps us understand what the trends are. I took this picture because normally all 4 major networks we're watching, 24/7 news networks, are talking about the exact same thing, almost to a T, except when Donald Trump was speaking at the American Farm Bureau Federation. 1 station covered it, 1. And I'm showing this because that signifies how irrelevant agriculture is to mainstream media. Fox News covered it, no surprise to any of us. Those of us that live in rural America tend to have more conservative views on politics. We want government out of our business. 1 station, and I took that picture because I was like, I've got to document this, that for once, they weren't all talking about the same thing. That sort of gets us into what I'm really going to talk to you about today. All of these headlines that we see on a regular basis, they're out there, they're being recirculated. The popularity surges. You think something's dead, nothing on the internet is ever dead. It will come back and haunt you. So much so, I've spent a lot of time working with food companies and understanding what their social media folks are doing, why they're making the decisions they're making. There was a question earlier about why are these food companies pushing these types of production methods? It's because they see something surge and trend. So when in conversations with Diet Coke, or with the Coke folks and the Diet Coke brands, Donald Trump sent a tweet in 2012 about how he's never seen a thin person drinking Diet Coke. That tweet comes back and haunts Coke every 2 to 3 weeks. It's from 2012. Nothing on the internet is ever dead. So we're trying to keep it a pulse on the trends. So literally, not just every day, but every month, every quarter, every year, we sort of look at what does that landscape look like? What does that landscape look like when we just look at the dairy conversation, which dairy and poultry tend to be the largest food conversations on the internet. But what do those issues also look like? What does animal welfare look like compared to other issues, sustainability, antibiotic use, hormone use, those types of things? So when there's something popping in the news, we can say, okay, this is not really that big of an issue, or we've got a crisis looming and we need to do something about it. So I want to rewind a little bit because how many of you have a social media account of some sort? Like you personally log in. Okay, over half the room. That's a good thing for 2018. So in 2017, they did a snapshot of what happens in an internet minute. A lot happens. There's 4.1 million videos viewed on YouTube in 1 minute. There's 46,000 photos uploaded to Instagram. 3.5 million searches on Google, 1.8 million snaps being captured on Snapchat. A ton is going on. There is a ton of information to filter through. We like to give perspective on how big these platforms are. Sometimes people will say, well, which platform should I be on? Well, here's a little perspective. There are 2 billion users on Facebook. That literally is the country that would be most populated in our world, 2 billion people. Basically, 75% of the adult world that has access to the internet is on Facebook. We now have 800 million users on Instagram. It's probably the fastest growing platform. Now that they have the video options, the story options, they're really trying to take Snapchat head to head. Twitter, which we all thought Twitter was dying, those of us that work in social media, we thought Twitter was like on life support. Starting to actually have a little bit of a resurgence. 317 million people, so a little less than the US population, but it would be, a few very large countries in Europe. Now, Snapchat's that hard for us to really understand. Got a bad rap when it first launched because kids decided to do some naughty things on it. But now it's that way that literally even people that I'm friends with, they Snapchat me because the stuff disappears. Not because they're trying to hide it, but they're out of memory on their phones. Snapchat doesn't give us a lot of information, and because of that disappearing aspect, we can't really track it well. But it's important to know that information is being shared there. And then what I would say is the professional platform is LinkedIn. I don't want us to underestimate the power of LinkedIn, though, because when you talk about food companies, when you talk about food marketers, they're on LinkedIn. So if you want to influence those people, LinkedIn is the place to be. Okay, so what's really winning the internet? We, every month, will look at what's trending. Not in agriculture, not in food, but like what's trending on the internet. So in the last month, this was the #1 trending thing on Facebook. This woman wrapped her cat. Her live cat, she wrapped it. It's a video. And if you can see that there is over 80 million views of this video that occurred, and it was shared almost 1 million times. Instagram, another large platform that gets a lot of engagement. This is where the famous celebrities that the activists use come in key. Emma Watson shared a book she's reading, the most engaged post on Instagram in the last 30 days. And then this is where Twitter always leaves us scratching our head. So a random person who made a random hand signal said retweet or bad luck all of 2018, and people did it. And then I don't know if any of you saw this other one, but a college-age kid posted a picture of his dad taking videos, boomerang videos, so they're sort of like GIFs, of his mom doing carpet angels, snow angels, for her 29 Instagram viewers to see. It started trending. And it's the super simple, superhuman things that on Twitter sometimes really go viral. You don't have to be famous to become famous on Twitter. So let's dig in. Let's dig into what people are actually saying about food. Here are just some trending things from the last 6 months that we wanted to show. Donuts are always popular. This one is about food labels getting, says food labels are getting more and more complicated and deceiving. What do they mean? And for the last 3 years, the largest antibiotic post on the internet has been this plate of ice. It is the GMO-free, antibiotic-free, vegan, gluten-free. It is always trending. It's like Diet Coke's Trump tweet, this is antibiotics, plate of ice. People are over the labels. They're everywhere because every marketer is trying to get a heads up, but people are over the labels. So we're always wondering, okay, these food production issues are what's driving the internet. What we see is the food production issues are really actually super minor, and it's the taste and cost conversation that dominates. It doesn't matter if it's dairy, it doesn't matter if it's poultry. It honestly doesn't even matter if it's beef. Even though beef is the more expensive protein item, people still talk about it in droves, how it tasted, how they enjoyed it. The reality, and this isn't just unique today, this is all the time, is people are talking about other stuff. And right now, it's Donald Trump. Everyone is talking about Donald Trump globally. So I just did a little playing around, and I decided to take our topic on animal welfare. So we're looking for all the animal welfare conversation on this topic. And then I overlaid it with just Donald Trump, his handle, his name, variations of his name, President Trump, and I overlaid it on the animal welfare. Literally, he trends in the animal welfare topic a lot. Then I overlaid the undercover video issues. Undercover videos, even though they're a problem for us, don't even compare to the issue that Donald Trump has on a daily basis when it comes to PR. One thing we have learned in the last 18 months through our monitoring is that animal rights activists actually hate someone more than CAFOs. They hate Donald Trump. He has been a huge, huge distraction. We've had several undercover videos where we have sort of been like, this could be the one that really rocks us, and then Donald tweets. I almost think that maybe American Farm Bureau Federation or National Milk Producers are like paying him to tweet when we have an undercover video, because it almost sometimes is simultaneous. So I just share this with you because when you think your earth is being shattered, and it does feel that way, remember they're probably talking about Donald Moore. So I want to put it into context. We've got Olympics gearing up. We love when major events are going on because we can really get some good context going on. In a month, we have about 100,000 animal welfare mentions. That's how much people are talking about it. During Dairy Month, we'll see an insurgence of, on a high year, we've seen 200,000 mentions about Dairy Month. In one day right now, we have 600,000 mentions of the Olympics around the world in English, just for perspective. People are so preoccupied with what's trending or what's going on right now. Announcements happen, and let me just tell you, if you have an undercover video on your farm, what you don't want to happen is you don't want your end user, someone like McDonald's, to say, we're going to stop using products from X farm, because that's when we really start to have a problem. So when McDonald's makes an announcement on something, they'll take up about half the conversation, whether it's an animal welfare piece, whether it's antibiotics. McDonald's is just talked about a lot in general. So in a 2-day period, McDonald's had, almost 100,000 mentions in this 2-day period. Antibiotics, we're probably sitting there at 10,000. McDonald's global policy on antibiotics had 15,000 mentions. When McDonald's does something, people pay more attention. Doesn't mean their whole audience is paying attention, but just want to share that perspective. The beautiful thing is it's just headlines. Because McDonald's is a publicly traded company, there's lots of headlines. And it's headlines around the globe. So I wanted to pull in examples from this event in August that were non-US based. Because to someone else's question earlier too, sometimes it's the countries outside of the United States and those folks that can sometimes drive policy for us that our people don't actually want. So I wanted to dig in a little bit and actually talk to you guys about the issues we track around dairy. And what are those peaks and valleys for dairy? So over the last 12 months, I just pulled the conversation about dairy hormones, the conversation around antibiotics, and the conversation about animal welfare as it pertains to dairy farms. So on a consistent basis, you're sitting around anywhere between 2,500 and 5,000 mentions on these types of topics. And you have spikes. And you can probably remember some of these stories. So the first spike in late April was actually after one of those animal rights activists that hurt animals to get a video doesn't go to jail. And this was actually in the UK. Dairy farmers petitioned government to rename soy milk. Do we all remember that from this past year? That really started to trend. And then there was a little issue in Australia. They literally had a dead cow hanging at a restaurant that really sparked a lot of controversy. So again, that skyrocketed. And then do you all remember the dairy video that you talked about earlier in Florida? That Larson video also spiked. Here's the reality, and this is where we get in the weeds. So that slide I just showed you, this one right here, when I overlay that with what's going on in the food conversation, it looks like it's zero. I'm not trying to say it's not there, because it's there. Like I said, about 5,000 mentions. But what we have to figure out is how do we get to the people that are talking about taste, that are talking about the price of food, and are talking about cooking and recipes, because that's where the conversation is, and those folks aren't talking about the issues we just discussed. So what are they actually saying? There was a question earlier about egg layers. We're studying cage-free, or not cage-free, antibiotic-free broilers. Most of the broilers now in the United States are being raised antibiotic-free. I shouldn't say most, just over half. However, when we made this decision, they started hitting the grocery store shelves, less than 10% of the chicken being bought is being bought with that label that says no antibiotics ever. What a consumer wants and what a consumer says there or does are two different things. So we have to really gauge, what are they wanting? We did some surveys with 3,000 people around the globe. And we wanted to understand what their thought process was. So we asked them, which of these food groups are important in a healthy diet? I want you to pause for a second and look at the blue column on the US, and I want you to look at the number that is at the end of sweets, treats, and soda. In the US, we think they're part of a healthy diet by 17% of the population, while meat is only seen as healthy by almost 40% of the population. Dairy is sitting in the same vein, almost 40%, a little bit more. Our folks don't understand that meat can actually be part of a healthy diet. What's crazy for us is, if you've read the news in the last few weeks, this year is going to be the year that we break the record for the amount of meat consumed per American, yet we don't think it's good for us. We asked them, why do you buy organic? Okay, like, we know it could be that trendy new purse you have or that brand name pair of jeans you have on, but like, really, why are you paying more money for something that isn't different? Well, they really think it's free of chemicals and pesticides. Those of us that work in agriculture know that there are organic chemicals and pesticides. They think it's safer, better for the environment, and more nutritious. And it's not just a few. Over 60% of them that are buying this feel that way. So we asked organic purchasers have a strong belief on what label. What's most important? The organic purchasers feel like it's healthier, where those who don't buy organic think that the organic purchases actually are better for the environment and they're safer to eat, even though they know they're not more nutritious. So we started to look into the conversation around antibiotics when it came to these food companies and the labels they put on it. The largest antibiotic-free push in 2016 was Purdue Chicken. Have you guys seen their commercials? They're the ones that feed oregano. When we started studying this, they have over 50% of the share of voice when you look at the antibiotic conversation in meat, and they're paying for it. And I'm not dogging them for paying for it. I think it's actually really brilliant marketing. It just isn't the side of the marketing that I agree with. They eliminated those antibiotics, and they spiked the conversation when they said that. When investors urge fast food chains, including McDonald's, to reduce antibiotics, it makes the news. We are fools if we think that the stock market does not impact markets when it comes to food marketing of labels. Investors control and dictate. If they want something to go one way, they can put enough pressure on management to make that happen. So, consumer perceptions around those hormones. 61% believe no added hormones means that there are no hormones at all in meat or milk they purchase, which means we failed them in biology. Those of us, again, that work in agriculture know that if you are a mammal, you have hormones. It doesn't matter if you have no added hormones. 73% of the respondents believe hormones are used to raise the animals, regardless of what a label says. 66% believe that those hormones can cause cancer, and 59% believe it's why we have a perception of early puberty. But butter still matters. So when I look at the conversation, this was the largest trending butter post in the last month. I pulled this at Christmas time, so it was probably back in November. 14,000 people wanted to watch a video or shared the video of how butter is made. This one actually got 13 million views. We get hung up on people don't know this stuff. When they answer a survey question, they're answering it based on what they think their friends want them to say. But then when we go back to Facebook, we find out that people are just curious about butter, and they want lots of cheesecake. This was the largest trending butter post on Instagram that wasn't by a corporation, essentially. The corporations can put a lot of money behind it. But this is just a food blogger posting her cheesecake made with real butter. How many of you follow Wendy's? Because this is when it starts to get really fun for us. Anybody follow Wendy's on Twitter? They're pretty hysterical, right? The one person? Okay, all of you need to follow Wendy's. Wendy's decided a year ago that they were going to change the way they did social media. You know, I don't know, at the time they were, fifth on fast food restaurants in terms of gross sales. And they got really snarky, like super snarky. super hysterical for those of you who need a good laugh at night. So they get really stupid questions from customers on Twitter, and one of them really challenged them on their fresh, never frozen beef. He said, I don't get it. Do you have hot trucks that take your beef from store to store? I mean, how can you never have frozen beef? Well, how do you keep beef cold if it's not frozen? A refrigerator. This dude forgot about refrigeration. And Wendy's took him to task. I mean, so much so that the internet erupted on this poor guy and he had to delete his account. But what happened was people were talking about Wendy's. People who hadn't been to Wendy's in years were talking about Wendy's because of this hysterical conversation. So then all of a sudden, Wendy's is actually getting more traffic in the drive-thru because a spicy chicken sandwich does sound sort of good. So then McDonald's, the behemoth, McDonald's, makes an announcement that they're going to make some of their restaurants have never frozen beef for some of their quarter pounders. Wendy's steals their PR moment and says, hey, McDonald's, so you still use frozen beef in most of your burgers in all of your restaurants? Asking for a friend. Wendy's got more retweets on their response to McDonald's announcement than McDonald's got, period. And not just by a little. McDonald's got 6,000 retweets on their announcement. When I screen captured this back in March, Wendy's had over 75,000 retweets. So it wasn't like they just stole it a little bit, they stole it a lot. And I say this because sometimes we have to laugh at ourselves and sometimes we have to poke fun at ourselves. So there are things that you do on your farm that you can poke fun at. So now what? I'm just telling you that the fight against antibiotics is not going to go away. The governments are attacking it, the food chains are attacking it, everyone's talking about it. Here's the sad part. The activists are winning because there's more of them talking about it. So if you have a social media account, but you don't ever post, I'm going to cough my husband. He lurks, he reads, he knows what's going on, he never posts. He has Facebook and Twitter, he never posts. We are so small in this conversation. On our best day, when we're talking about an issue like antibiotics, we can only have 800 mentions. When we're fighting against announcements where on their best day they can get 100,000 mentions. We are 0.2% of the total conversation when it comes to agriculture on the internet, which means that 99.8% of the conversation is being controlled by people that aren't farmers or work in the ag industry. They're controlling the conversation for us. So what we like to do is really dig into the data of what people are talking about, what's not trending but could be trending. So here's what I can tell you. PBR, hipsters love PBR. I don't get it. It was bad 30 years ago. It's still bad today. Hipsters love it. You know what else hipsters like? Raw milk. Family owned has been used so much that now people are trying to differentiate and they say they're family managed. So we're superior. This should not be a surprise to any of you, but vegans are now targeting calf management. How are you raising those poor calves and are you ripping them away from your mothers? They've really changed their tactics there and aren't targeting so much like milk cows, but how are you raising your calves? So pay a lot of attention there. Immigration is a constant conversation in dairy, which should not be a surprise to any of you. Smelly dairy is a trend that we're starting to see also in social media over the last year. That's how they're referring to the odor. It's this phrase that we keep seeing pop up. Price on farm plus opportunity to talk with consumers to move the quantity. So consumers don't understand that farmers are paid by the hundredweight. They don't even know what that means. Second of all, they don't understand how everybody is getting a piece of your milk when you sell it. And so when milk is cheap at the grocery store, that means how little you're getting on farm. There's opportunities to talk about milk pricing. And there's also opportunities to talk about people how they can freeze milk, freeze cheese, freeze butter, all of those things. Antibiotics will continue. Now that KFC was the last one to check the box on the poultry side, it's going to continue to be coming after everyone. And then GMOs, no species is safe with GMOs. GMOs is that word that's the lightning bolt that everyone sort of understands, even though they don't understand. But they're more willing to talk about GMOs and how they want GMO-free whatever than something like antibiotics or hormones. Okay, so I love lists. So I'm going to tell you 5 things that you can do to better engage to change these numbers. So I'm going to tell you all to join groups on Facebook. Everybody who's on Facebook know what a group is versus a fan page? Quick social media lesson. There's groups. So like I'm in groups for recipes from the farm. I'm in groups with my friends from church who are all doing the same book club. Look for groups that you can join. Here's why. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook and a $100 billion billionaire at 30, decided that he's going to have Facebook change how people are getting information. So if you have a farm Facebook page, or if you have a blog page like me, or you have a company page, essentially what Facebook is telling us is we're going to ratchet down how much of your stuff that your Facebook page is going to be seen by people, because people are complaining because they just want to see stuff from other individuals. But what we can see is that if you are in a community, like a group, and you're having conversations like that, you're starting to skyrocket how much information you can see. So go look for groups. If you don't know what a group is, ask someone. You're probably in groups now and don't even realize it. Comments are currency. 7, 8 years ago when I started training folks on how to start a blog or how to participate in social media, I used the term comments are currency. I haven't used it in probably a good 3 or 4 years. I'm coming back to it. Comments are currency. This is why. See the Zuckerberg statement. Here's why. A friend of mine, Eggland's Best Eggs. They're supposed to be the high quality, not organic, but have some quirky food labels on them. Best eggs. She literally, on her personal Facebook page, this past month said, I use Eggland's Best. I've seen a bit of blood in the eggs before, no big deal, but I found an embryo. Do you know what's wrong with that statement? Any of you know how chickens are raised for eggs? Yeah, like you can't have an embryo. There's not a rooster. Again, biology failed this woman. So this whole thread of people being grossed out, and finally one person said it's not an embryo because there's no rooster present on these farms to have an embryo. I mean, seriously, it was like 60 comments. And then someone finally was like, it's not an embryo. It's impossible for it to be an embryo. So that's why I use this example, because sometimes just paying attention and leaving a comment can be so much more impactful than some elaborate post you do on your own page. And the beautiful thing about comments is that people are alerted when you leave a comment on Facebook, so then they can all see it. Okay, here's the other thing. I love Jesus. My friends know I love Jesus. My family knows I love Jesus. I don't really talk about Jesus a lot on Facebook, but I have friends who talk about Jesus a lot on Facebook. And I end up hiding them because I know they love Jesus. They don't have to tell me every day they love Jesus. We in agriculture do the same thing. Sometimes we share farm stuff so much that we become annoying to our fellow friends. So share stuff on your personal page besides just farm news and that type of stuff. Again, see Zuckerberg statement, because I said personal page. And here's a prime example. Dave Link is a feedlot manager in the Panhandle of Texas. He has really interesting stuff that he can pull off of a feedlot that has 85,000 head on it. It's super cool. However, most people don't care. What he has been able to do, because he also is a triathlete, is he talks about training for his triathlons all the time. So all of a sudden, Freona Feed Yard has about 30% of their audience who are into health and fitness, because one of their managers talks to their triathlon people about the triathlon more than he's talking about the feedlot. So don't be boring is the lesson here today. Share more pictures. See Zuckerberg's statement. They're killing videos. I shouldn't say killing. They've been so ramped up on videos that they're letting them go down. If anyone in this room likes doing Facebook Lives, don't quit. Facebook Live is not going to lose momentum. Videos they say are going to lose momentum, I'm sort of calling BS on this because from what I'm seeing, videos is what trends every day of the week, all year long on Facebook. It's always video. But they're saying more pictures. And then number 5, talk more about butter. Like, I'll use this picture over and over, and I wish I could find another one, but I just keep using it because it's hysterical to me. When Land O'Lakes butter goes on sale at the grocery stores near me, like if you don't get there on day 1 of the sale, forget it. They're out of butter. I don't know why people are crazy about Land O'Lakes butter. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but I'm not afraid to buy generic butter. I understand how dairy products are all made in the same plants. But when Land O'Lakes butter goes on sale, we know it in our social listening because people are talking about how much butter they bought. So this person bought over 60 pounds of butter and then froze it. You guys have butter. Pork producers have bacon, you have butter. There are some trending diets now. Ketogenic, low carb, high fat. Let me just tell you, these people cannot eat enough butter. They're eating so much butter, they're putting it in their coffee. I don't understand it, but they're doing it. You have butter, talk about it. So what's Elanco doing? So it's no secret we're the hormone antibiotic feed additive company. We have everything in our product portfolio that causes problems for those food companies. So we are working really hard to expose these food myths. We did the survey that I showed highlights from. We're adding stuff to Enough Movement all the time about the truth about food. It's sort of our one-stop shop where if we're going to send a consumer somewhere, it's not going to be to Elanco.com. It's not going to be to Elanco.us. We don't want them to know about all our products. We're not trying to hide it, but they don't care. We're sending them to the Enough Movement. So what we're doing now is trying to take some lessons from Wendy's. How can we be snarky where legal will actually approve it for us and connect with those consumers? So feeling guilty about your burger? Don't. Beef makes up just 2.2% of greenhouse gases. Your car makes up 27%. What we have found from doing this is that most people don't even think about the environment when they're buying beef. They might think about their heart health, that type of stuff, like, oh, is this, I've read on the internet that beef isn't good for you. But it's been interesting to see the comments come back through for this. Antibiotics. Eat your burger like it doesn't contain antibiotics. Because whether the label says no antibiotics or not, the meat or milk you buy is free from harmful residues and of antibiotics. Again, this provided an opportunity. We got challenged. When you go saying something like this, you're going to get challenged. You got to be prepared, and we're prepared. And we're prepared with third-party documentation because they know if we link to some Elanco research, they're going to call BS on us. So we go out knowing that they're going to come after us, and it provides us an opportunity to comment back. And then we just try to show them normal people. Like, here's Jane. Jane knows whether a label says no antibiotics or not. The meat milk she buys is free from harmful residues from antibiotics. Be like Jane. You also notice that we're not saying it's free from harmful antibiotics. It says it's free from harmful residues. One thing that keeps myself and the people I work with up at night is that when the consumers realize, like, it could have 1 part per billion antibiotic residue, that the consumers are going to have a fit. So we're trying to segue into that conversation so they understand what that means. So this actually wraps up the meat of my presentation, but I've sort of just dumped a lot of information on you and wanted to know if you guys have any other questions pertaining to this stuff. And I don't know, did the first presenter leave? Because she might have the answers to any too. Any questions? I know you all want to go to lunch. Well, I don't know precisely what the next food issue is going to be, but I think based on what we're seeing with a lot of these diet trends, I think meat and fat is going to become increasingly more popular, and it's actually going to be our partners in the grain industry, like the wheat industry, that are going to continue to have the problem. Carbs and sugar have become the devil, and I think there's going to be a lot of focus on how sugar and carbs are the devil, and it's going to be an opportunity for us to seize the moment. And that's just based on what I'm seeing in social media. That's what's trending. So I mean, for us in the dairy industry, we're always going to have the same thing. Are we treating our animals well? That type of thing. I think antibiotics are not, the antibiotic residue is, resistance issue is not going away either, because the World Health Organization has tested it as one of their issues they're taking care of. So just know the antibiotics fight is not going anywhere as well.
So consumers want real. So I have two questions. Number
Yeah.
one, what percent of the people who are using all of your social media are the demographic mom buying food? Because most moms don't have time to play all those games, at least this mom doesn't.
Yeah.
And the next question is you provide all these infographics. They're cute and snarky, but would it be better for us to take a better snapshot on our farm and then put your words on it, because that gives it a real flavor? Because we're getting immune to everybody sending, I'm tired of all the infographics. I'm sorry,
No.
I gave you two questions, but
Nope, you gave me two great questions. So I'll answer the second one first. Yes, we want you to use authentic pictures on your farm with that information. 1,000 times yes. Like, I can't, yes, yes, yes. That's what we want. That's what we need more of. What we need to do, though, is balance with bait and switch. So we're studying Google AdWords, too. We're studying what people are actually searching for in Google. So you sort of got to lure them in, and that's why I joke with you to talk about butter, but I'm sort of being serious, too. Lure them in with butter, and then talk about how you're raising your cattle. Because people aren't searching at the same rate for how dairy cattle are raised as they're searching for, can I leave butter on my counter, for example. That'll get 35,000 searches a day. How dairy cattle are raised gets 350 searches a day. So you've got to figure out how you bait and switch. Your first question on the demographic, we actually dig down into that demographic. So that's why sometimes when a food company will call us and say, everyone's talking about, name the issue, GMOs. We need to have our infant formula, because this was a real problem we dealt with, we need to have our infant formula be GMO free, because that's what everybody on the internet is talking about. Well, we actually gave them a report that said when you drill down to the mothers who are buying infant formula, there's only like less than 1% of that population that's talking about any of that. Said infant formula company went GMO free on their formula, and it bombed. Because again, they're looking at the whole internet. Our tools allow us to focus down and look at what are those demographics? Not just are they male, female, but where do they even live? Is this a conversation that's only taking place in San Francisco, or is it taking place in Indianapolis or Madison or the Quad Cities? We're able to dissect that information to really understand. So we're trying then to take that information of, we know that women between 35 and 45 who live in the middle part of the United States, they're just looking for economic meals, and they want all these shopping plans. Those are the women that we then turn around and target with those ads for that infographic. So we are very much getting into the weeds on what those conversations. I give you more high-level global English. Here's what the data looks like. But when it comes to understanding the issue, we dig way down. We can even get into buying patterns. Twitter especially gives us a lot of information on their users and their demographics, and even their buying patterns based on what they're talking about.
I just have a question for like the people who are buying our products, like the companies that are making our products. How, we've heard that they sometimes partner with the activists to come up with their standards or
Their policies.
Yeah, their policies. How do we, the farmers, make time, or how can we connect with them and to tell them our story or to tell them our practices, or for example, the GMOs and things like that. And no offense, everybody's talking about technologies, and all these are great technologies, but it's like a slap in our face to use these technologies, and we just want to get ahead, and so how do we connect with them, or where do we start to share our information?
So first of all, know that, especially like on welfare policies, there's antibiotic policies, there's GMO policies, welfare policies. There are the organizations that are controlling the animal welfare policies of a lot of these food companies are organizations where they have literally 6 people on staff. So it's not that they're outgunning us, it's that they have very singularly focused agendas with very singularly focused food companies. So my advice would be to you that if your milk is going to a specific company, I don't know where it's going, let's just say it's going to Dannon Yogurt. I'm just using that as an example. I would either work with your co-op. I'm sort of a control freak. I would probably go around my co-op. I'd let them know I'm doing it. And try to meet with that person at Dannon and be like, hey, I'm one of your producers. I want to make sure that I'm transparently showing you and talking to you about how I'm raising my animals so that you don't set a policy that's actually going to put me out of business. They're so sometimes singularly focused on the annoying chihuahua chewing on them that that's who they give the attention to. You as a dairy farmer, you're busy milking cows, right? Feeding calves, you know, whatever time of year. So you aren't an annoying chihuahua to that food company. Folks like Elanco, we're in there talking too, but again, they want to hear from you, but they're going to pay attention to who the squeaky wheel is. So be a squeaky wheel for those food companies you're selling to, telling them you want to help with setting standards. You want to do what's best, not just for your farm, but for the end consumer. They want partnerships. They just don't even know where to start. So when an activist company, and let me just tell you, food companies don't look at those activist organizations as activists. We do, but they do not. I've actually changed terminologies on reports because I would say activist news, and that was offensive to marketers and food companies that would get our reports to. So we just broke it down to news and then ag-related stories because we wanted to educate them on ag stuff, but we didn't want to come off bias. So be really careful on your terminology when you meet with them, but you got to just start hounding them, which I know you don't have time for, but calling once a week and asking to meet with the animal welfare person or the sustainability person or that person, eventually they're going to meet with you because that's how those activist organizations get in there. If you have any questions, come on up. If you need anything in the future, feel free to tweet at me. If you reach out to the DBA organization, they have my contact information. If you ever have an issue on farm and you just want someone to look at how bad of an issue is this, call us. We can take a look. We're probably already monitoring it.
Can you get the EPI reports if you're, like, do you have to get it from your Elanco rep? Or
Yes, your Elanco rep. I was like looking for Troy. I'm like, where's Troy? Talk to your Elanco rep because they have access to them all. So if that's something you're interested in, they can make sure you're on the distribution list when they come out. Because we also do issues and case studies that would probably be really interesting for some of you. I'm actually finishing up one on undercover videos, looking at the last 3 years and the different organizations and spokespeople and different species and how those trends with undercover videos change from organization to species. All right, thank you.
From here, I guess lunch is being served down in the trade show.